Man, welcome back to another edition, season 1, episode 4 of the Pull Up Podcast Show. And of course, I'm your guy, the magnificent Coach Tony. And tonight we got a tremendous show. Oh my God. First of all, make sure you like us, share with your friends, and more importantly, subscribe to the show. Welcome to Black History Month, and more importantly, women in sports. We're going to celebrate both tonight. But before we do that, Val, you know what to do. Drop that beat.
It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. Bounce the voice and Coach Tony, you know. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Show. I said bounce the voice and Coach Tony, you know. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Show. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up.
Man, it's the Pull Up Podcast Show. I love that beat. I'm sitting here vibing to it. But listen, tonight's show is going to be absolutely phenomenal. We're bringing a young lady on who's got a tremendous story to talk about. Make sure that you ask the questions in the chat line so we can make sure that she answers your question. But she comes to us south of the border, Mexico, by way of San Diego, and now resides in the state's capital in D.C., doing her thing. She has been on a tremendous journey. She is the Associate Athletic Director of Diversity, Equity. Ooh, man, she got a lot of titles. Inclusion and Belonging at the American University. I don't want to spoil it for you. We're going to bring her on, let her talk about her own story. Bring on my girl, Patty Medina. Coach Patty.
Hey, Coach Tony.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me on your show.
I'm glad. Make sure that whatever bad weather you guys got going on in the East Coast, keep it out there. We're in the South. I don't want any of it.
Yeah, it's been a little crazy, sporadic, but the weather today was great.
Oh, that's good. Well, maybe I can send you some of this sunshine. By the way, it is a wonderful time to have you on doing Black History Month and Women in Sports. We just passed that a week ago and going to talk a lot about that. So it's tremendous. We've had a lot of great guests, and it's been phenomenal. You and I kind of go back several years now, and as we were talking, and to finally get you a part of the show, this is one of the hottest sports shows that's coming up. We've been doing some big things. We've had a lot of great guests the last few weeks, and to have you here today is my honor, and I definitely appreciate you. So I'm going to give you your flowers real quick.
I appreciate that, and congratulations to your success. And, you've had some amazing guests, and I'm just honored to be here.
Oh, yeah. Let's go back to the early days. So you were originally coming out of Sonora, Mexico, a little south of Arizona, into the U.S. by the way of San Diego. Kind of take us down that plight of growing up there and then ending up in San Diego, of all places. Why not end up in Arizona?
Yeah, so I was born in Sonora, Mexico, in a small town called Bavispe. And the most common town that people know there is Agua Prieta, which is a border town. So Agua Prieta, Nogales, Hermosillo, those are the main ones that people are familiar with. You and I had talked even about Agua Prieta and their basketball team. They have like a semi-pro basketball team, the Vaqueros. So I grew up there. I was there until about 8 and 9 years old. Then we came to the United States. My dad got a work visa, and so we came to the United States, and we stayed in San Diego. I grew up in Chula Vista. I lived in South San Diego, but I grew up in Chula Vista. I went to Chula Vista High School, and throughout my entire adolescent years, childhood years, I played sports. So I played basketball, volleyball, field hockey. I was a thrower for shot put discus during track and field, and then in field hockey. So it was sports was everything that I could do. It's a universal thing, right? So coming to the United States and not speaking English, you could play sports and you could play soccer and not really have the same dialect, but be able to relate to all these all your teammates, you know, just by playing sports. And then I was pretty good. I was a tomboy, so I was pretty good. And I was hung out with the boys, so I had a good time. But yeah, so we ended up staying in San Diego. And then from there went off to college. I attempted to play 1 year in college, and then I started coaching and I fell in love with coaching. And so I transitioned out of playing into coaching when I was 17 years old. And then decided to come back to San Diego. So that was in the Bay Area, and then decided to come back to San Diego, and I finished my studies at San Diego State. And then just from there grew into the grassroots coaching, you know, middle
I know all
school.
about the grassroots. That's my background. I know all about them grassroots. And now, did you have a brother or sister, or maybe your dad that was a big sports figure? The reason why you jumped into sports so quickly, or it was just once you got to the States and you kind of seen everything going on in San Diego, you're like, hey, I got to play something.
No, that's a great question, because I'm the oldest in my family, and I'm actually the only one that got into sports. And I think I can attribute that to the kids that I used to hang out with in Mexico. Every time I would go back in the summer, we would play baseball with like a stick and rocks.
Yeah,
and then
stickball.
So we would just do whatever we could to stay out of trouble. And in a time that we didn't have TikTok and Instagram, and so we were outside.
Okay.
And I think that's where my love for sports started.
Oh, that's awesome. And so now you're in San Diego. You come back, you go to SDSU. San Diego State campus is absolutely beautiful. It's gorgeous.
Yes.
So
yes.
you do that, you get involved, you say, oh, okay, I'm going to try my chances at basketball at the collegiate level. What did you do? Was it a little more difficult at the college level than you thought? Or is just the work ethic, because now you transition from high school to college. So obviously you got better athletes, you got girls that can play basketball, and then you're away from home. So it's kind of like that tripod of everything. So that kind of the thicker things going on at that time.
Yes. When I was coaching, I was 17 coaching 14-year-olds. So I had to grow up. I had to grow up pretty quickly in a sense of I was their role model, so I had to make sure that I was on top of what I needed to do in my studies and my education, because they were looking up to me. And so it's funny because a lot of them reach out to me now and they're like, I can't believe you were doing this when you were taking care of me when you were 18, and I can't even take care of myself at 18, so, but yeah, that's kind of how it happened. Just grew into the coaching role, and as mentioned, did it the grassroots way, as you're very familiar with, going middle school to JV to varsity assistant to JUCO practice player to then being on staff at the JUCO level. And then I was at the JUCO level. For those that don't know, JUCO is junior college. So I was at the JUCO level for 6 years. And then when I turned 30, I had my first opportunity as a collegiate head coach. And so I was a collegiate.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
So I was a collegiate head coach for 3.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No, you're good.
So,
for 3 years. I did that for 3 years.
Wow. And I tell you the funny part about just going back a little bit, you just kind of click something there, that grassroots, because I'm still doing grassroots in the summertime, right? Helping these AAU guys still play and get into the next level and all that. But it's phenomenal. You're sitting here as a young player, right? And then you're like a player/coach. And some of these kids are probably like, I'm not listening to you, Patty. You're barely older than I am. So how did that make you feel that you're now you're in that basketball side of the house, but you're not too far removed first to the people that you're actually coaching, right?
Right. No, and honestly, I think it was an advantage. I think it's an advantage. And I think you're seeing it now in college hoops too. You see a lot of players wanting to play for the younger coaches, the newer generation of coaches, because you have that relationship aspect where you think, okay, they recently went through what I went through. So, they can relate even more. And so for me, luckily, I never really had a difficulty building rapport with the students and the players that I coached. There was always that level of respect that, I was a cool, fun coach, but don't play me.
Right, don't blame me. Hey, and I tell, hey Patty, I still stay in shape. I tell my, hey, you come on now. I can tie them up. We can choose a team. And the best part about it is when you let your guys, especially the guys who quote unquote think they're on the starting lineup, choose who they want to play with them, and then you get the bench and you still beat them with the bench. Oh, that is the best.
Yeah. That
is absolutely the best. So you're the oldest now. Your other siblings, does anyone else play sports, or was it just kind of you? And did your brothers and sisters kind of look up to you and say, wow, she's doing this, maybe I want to jump into soccer or lacrosse, anything at all? Or you just kind of was that callous?
Yeah, so I have a younger sister. She did try to play basketball, but then didn't play anything after high school. She just got into the workforce, and she's happily married with kids, and she's a flight attendant now, so she went a different route. But yeah, I'm the only sports junkie in my family, which is kind of interesting.
That's good. That kind of brings a twist on things, and you got to know, and you and I talked a little bit. I love it. I give credit to my guy, Coach Travis McAveen, Ohio guy, brings me south of the border with the guys all the time. In Ligaputa, he goes down to Belize. You and I were talking about that, and Santo Domingo, Santiago, and he's got another camp coming this summer in the Dominican Republic. So it's great, especially what I'm looking at, what's happening with the NBA, with basketball beyond borders, and be able to do that and be able to go. So now you're sitting in San Diego, you're doing all this, and now all of a sudden your career now starts to shift a little bit. So you're coaching for a while. You have a very successful career. You end up being one of the highest ranking coaches on that side as a Mexican descent as a woman coach. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I didn't know. There's a gentleman. His name passes me right now, but he's currently the head coach at Simpson University. So he's the only active Mexican-born head coach, and so he's there at Simpson. But at the time, I was the only female Mexico-born head coach at the collegiate level. I haven't heard of any others. Hopefully, I won't be the last one. But yeah, so it was just me and him. He's still coaching. He's doing a great job at Simpson. And, it's a chip on your shoulder for sure. People always talk about being the first, and they talk about all the accolades and all the perks that come with being the first, but nobody really touches on the subject of the heavy burden at times that you have to carry, by being the first, and that you can make or break a situation for someone. And so I've always carried myself in a way that I make sure that the way I carry myself, someone else says, well, oh, I want to hire another Latina because Patty was great, or Patty, her work ethic is amazing. So most Latinas should be like that, and so not that they should stereotype, but that's really what it comes down to. We represent not just ourselves, but everyone that would have an opportunity after us. So that's one of the things that I take a lot of pride in. And like I said, I didn't know I was the only female Mexico-born coach at the time. And then Enlace a la Cancha, which is like a newspaper in Mexico, reached out, and they're like, hey, do you know that, you're the only female ever Mexico-born coach? And I'm like, I didn't know that.
That makes you feel good.
Yeah, it did. And then it added like an additional pressure, like, oh shoot, I gotta do well.
I gotta step my game up, right?
It was great. It was great, and it's an honor. And even now, like, I get to represent as a Latina athletic administrator, and there's even less of us in the administrative level. So in coaching, there's only 3% Latinos. And so I think in administration, it might be even less.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm on that. I feel every bit of it, 20 years on the sideline, being on the college sideline, it's funny. It's a game that the black and brown play a lot of, but we don't get the same opportunity as the majority. And we fight about it. We talk about it. The good thing about the NBA, you've been there. You got friends like I do at that higher level as well. At least we got more NBA minority coaches than we do in the NFL, obviously. And they've been talking about that. We are talking to my girl, Patty Medina. right now on the Pull Up Podcast Show with your guy, Coach Tony. Make sure you like us, make sure you share, and more importantly, make sure you subscribe to the show. We're going to take a break after the first quarter here, pay some bills. We'll be right back. Val, do your thing.
Are you a small business owner looking to grow? Introducing the Key Spot mobile app. I'm Cynthia McAllister, owner of the IT company Quality SAP. Since 2016, we have been supporting small businesses and help them promote and share their businesses, services, and events across the country. Key Spot is more than just an app. We are a network providing community. Key Spot, connecting communities and supporting small businesses.
Welcome back to the Pull Up Podcast Show. I'm your guy, the host of the Moses, Coach Tony, and my super guest here, Patty Medina. Patty, I got one of my guys, Mark, he's a big fan on the show here, and he asked at that time, during that time you were coming up in Mexico, then moving on into San Diego, and you end up being the only sports figure quasi in your house, as a kid. Did you have any particular sports figures that you idolized or looked up to at that point where you said, hey, I enjoy watching this kid? Because once again, you're back home playing stick ball. I play stick ball in the street, but we used to use a broom handle in the tennis ball or racket ball. And but I idolized certain guys coming up. Did you have a certain particular person or a group of people that you said, hey, when I get out of here, I want to be just like that person?
That's a great question, because that's one of the things that I'm most excited about today's generation, is that they get to see a lot of women that they can idolize. And when I was growing up, we didn't get to see a lot of women. So I remember, following the Michael Jordans, the Scottie Pippens, the Steve Nash, like just watching them. But I remember vividly when Cheryl Swoops got her own sneakers. Yeah, I was just like, I need those, because it was the only woman that we kind of knew about, and the only one that we were presented to, and at the time we didn't have the social media outlets that we have now, where you have highlights at the tip of your fingers to be able to watch someone's game and learn from someone's game. And so I remember Cheryl Swoops being the first woman that I was introduced to that, could hoop. And we all loved her. Like, all of us on our team loved her, because that was the name, and then you had Tina Thompson. And so those were two women.
Thompson, yes.
Yeah, you had Lisa Leslie. Like, you had all the ones that you had to go and find information on. But I grew up
Don't forget about Cynthia Cooper. Come on, don't forget about Cooper Loop.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, those were the ones that we heard of, but it wasn't like you heard about it on the news. Like, you would read books about it, you would read about it in magazines or newspapers. But yeah, I was a small forward, so I grew up really liking Alonzo Mourning's game. So Alonzo Mourning was one that I enjoyed, and that was one that I watched. And then I was as I got older, I became a Chris Webber fan. I was a Chris Webber fan.
Okay.
And the Sacramento
yes.
And Phoenix Suns. So of course, a lot of my family's in Arizona, so the Phoenix Suns are always a family favorite. But yeah, I would say I know. I gotta
apologize to you earlier, because me, a Chicago guy, unfortunately, I had the man with me in the city. Jordan put a lot of those candles out for some of those guys. You would look, and you hit a valid point, and that is the social media, the way we got our news, the way we watch TV. I just had a knockdown drag out yesterday, Patty, with one of my buddies talking about how he hated the All-Star game. And I was like, I get it. But it was kind of like what you just said. I said, these players now are high priced. They're more prima donnas. They're not like the Michael Jordan and Kevin McHale, Larry Bird, Isaiah, Magic Johnson era. They're not going to get out here and play for the love of the game. They're going to play for that paycheck. And the agents now run the business. And if the agent says, hey, Patty, I don't want you playing tonight, you're not going to play. It is incredible, because you find yourself in that career that you can now make a difference because you're at that situation where you got men and women coming to you, trying to be hired for certain positions and all that. So now, how did that work with you going now all the way across the country? Because now you're coming from this beautiful, hot California to now you end up in Boston.
No, I'm in DC, so I'm not in Boston.
I'm talking about
in DC.
your stop at Harvard before you got there. Was that in DC?
No, Harvard is in Maryland, so it's in Bel Air, Maryland.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of people think it's Hartford, Connecticut, but no, it's Hartford in Bel Air, Maryland. So it's Hartford Community College.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was in Texas for a year. I was at Our Lady of the Lake University in Texas for a
nice
year.
School.
Yeah, a beautiful campus too. And when I was there, that's when I started contemplating getting out of coaching, because my son was going into middle school, and I had told him, that at some point I was going to take a step back to be more involved in what he has going on with, and be a sports mom. And
Sure.
so I just transition out. And initially I thought I was going to transition out and be a sports management professor. So, because I was teaching sports management at Our Lady of the Lake. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll do it full time. I'll do that. So coincidentally, I was on LinkedIn and I had posted like, hey, I'm thinking about transitioning out of coaching. Like, I'm open to opportunities. And someone reached out to me from Bowie State University saying like, hey,
Maryland.
Yeah, we have a position available. Like, would you be interested? Can you come out here in a couple weeks and do an interview? You should apply. And so I said, you know what? Why not? Like, I'm already halfway through the country in Texas. Like, what's the other half? And so I ended up flying out here. I interviewed and I ended up getting the job. So this was February of 2020. And if you remember 2020, March 6th was when I was supposed to start working March 10th at Bowie State. But if you remember correctly, March 6th is when COVID hit. And so when everything with COVID started happening was in March 6th. And I remember the date because Bowie State called me and they're like, hey, we're going on a hiring freeze. We can't hire anyone. And we don't know how long this COVID is going to last. Like, we'll be in touch. And I had already moved out here. I had relocated. So I put all my stuff into storage. Yeah, I put all my stuff into storage and I said, okay, well, I'm going to go wait it out in California and then figure out, what's going to happen. And so then Bowie calls me and they were just like, hey, like, we just don't know what's going to happen. Like, we don't want to hold you up. So I said, okay, well, I'll start applying for other jobs. So then, because I had already moved here, so it's not like I could go back cross country. So I said, you know what? I was like, I'll make it work. So I ended up applying and I got the job at Our Lady of Mount Carmel, which is like a private high school, a K-12 school here in Maryland. And so I ended up becoming the assistant athletic director there and gym teacher. So I was the assistant athletic director and gym teacher there. And then my AD there, he was amazing. He is amazing. He's a mentor of mine. And he would always tell me, he was like, yo, like, you're too good for this. Like, you need to move up. You need to move up. And so for me, I was like, nah, like, I just transitioned out of coaching. Like, let me get my feet wet. And he said, no, like, you're ready. He was like, you're ready. So when the Hartford Community College position came about, he was the one that was like very supportive. He was just like, if you need me to call the AD, like, I'll help however I can. And so, yeah. And I speak a lot about allyship. I speak a lot about allyship because as people of color, like, the people in the rooms are white male and usually white male, sometimes white female. So it's important for us to have allyship so that those people can speak our names in those rooms. And so my AD, Alex, he did that for me. He called Hartford and he vouched for me. And so, yeah, so I got the job at Hartford and I was there for almost 2 years. And then just recently transitioned to American. So literally from 2020, 2020, when I decided to get out of coaching, I went from high school to JUCO to Division I athletics, and all within 3 years. So
that's why I'm hanging out with you. You say that's exactly why I'm hanging, because You know,
You're
those
like,
allies.
I need to get in now.
I'm rolling with it. Hey, that's why I'm like, hey, Patty, I
No,
told you I'm open. I'm open.
you're
Hey,
like
hey,
A1 since
like
day
this,
one.
exactly. So, hey, put my grandbaby in the game. You know how that go. So it is phenomenal, and you know the plight that you took, the opportunities you took, because at Harvard you end up being the AD / interim coach. I had some of those wonderful pictures watching you on the sideline screaming at the girls in practice. That was so cool. So, you
Yeah.
know, I know it's got the old juices flowing again because now you're wearing two hats before you take the opportunity to go. And you probably made a tremendous depth in some of those young ladies. I got one of my young girls on air with us tonight, in Belle Tramble. She's a young lady that's out of Alabama. And I was trying to recruit her to come play at my JUCO, and just the situation during the COVID, as you mentioned,
Mhm.
kind of took a back seat because when COVID hit and you had already moved out there, there's a possibility that your transition couldn't have happened. And the same thing with this young lady. And because of what had happened with the school and everything with COVID, she ended up going back, and then she hurt her Achilles. So she was feeling all down and out of pocket on everything. And I'm like, Patty, I'm telling her, like, hey, keep your head up. Keep doing what you got to do. Keep working. And she loved the coaching side, wanted to work with her AAU side and doing some things of that nature. And her mom reached out to me, and they keep in touch with me. And now she's starting her AAU program while she's in college. And I told her that's what it's all about. And those doors are going to open up. So I got to make sure that down the road, I keep her name in your mouth, because she's exactly running
Yeah.
your exact path, and she's trying to make some moves for herself. And that's what it takes sometimes. You got to open up those doors, and when they open, you got to kick them in, because we don't get those shots sometimes. And especially, like you said, 3% in the Mexican descent, you know, and I probably think with minority black men and black coaches, I'm probably just a little north of that, around maybe 8 to 10. So there's a lot of room to grow on that. So once you end up leaving Hartford and the opportunity came to American and you got there, how has that been?
Yeah, and before I answer that, I want to touch base on what you said about the young lady. One of the things I realized too is that sometimes we take so much time to live out the plans that we have for ourselves, and
Mm-hmm.
you'll find things not working out, right? So like for me, I wanted to coach, I wanted to be a head coach, I wanted to be a Division I head coach, and it just wasn't working. And then
Right.
when I finally was surrendered and I said, okay, well, what is it that you want me to do? And it was like, oh, go the admin side. I literally went from a high school assistant AD to a Division I associate athletic director in 3 years. What I couldn't do
That's
in 17
incredible.
years of coaching,
Yes.
it happened in 3 years. So, you know, to the young lady that is listening in right now, like literally just get out of your own way and just do the work, but then also like don't force what isn't there, right? And sometimes, especially athletes, I talk to athletes all the time, like they want to force a career in basketball and like longevity in basketball, and the
Right.
percentage is really low. Not many get to play overseas, not many get to, you know, go to the WNBA and the NBA.
60
So it's
jobs.
important.
60.
Yeah. And it's really important to know who you are outside of that, right? And it's important to really know how you are fulfilled outside of being an athlete. And I think one of the things that we forget to do is that we forget to develop the identity outside of coaching or outside of playing. And so I'm excited for her and her trajectory to start, you know, and I think when you have situations like that, you know, I joke with my friends, I'm like, you might need a spiritual cleanse, because like you're just hitting so many stops, you know, but it's really just sitting down with yourself and saying, well, what is it that I want to do? And I think for me, that's what it was, because I thought I was going to struggle with transitioning out of coaching. I thought I was going to be depressed. Right. I thought I was going to miss it. You know, I thought I was really going to enjoy being an interim head coach. And I was just like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. And the reason was because I realized that what I really loved about coaching was the mentorship and the leadership aspect. And I still get to do that now. So I
Yes,
still
and
get
that
to do
is incredible. I get, it's funny. I'm going to take what you just said a moment ago, and I absolutely love it. And I know it won't be plagiarism because I know you now have to worry about it. But get out of your own way. Patty, I had to get out of my way. And what I love about you more importantly is that I have known you through your entire journey. Once you hit a certain level, I seen that from the coaching to the athletic. And at that time, you just spoke my world. Sitting there X amount of years of high school, then going to college for the last 20 years, still trying to make it, guys making you promises. You know how that go. Oh yeah, once I make it, I'm going to bring you on as my assistant coach and do that. Yeah, whatever. And then all of a sudden they get there, you call them up. Hey, and then bloop, I'm sorry, but the number you're calling is no longer in service. What? And then when they see you, Patty, what's the first thing they say? Oh man, I didn't know you were looking. Come on, man. We just talked about that 2 years ago. So it's funny because I end up making the same plight almost similar a year ago, at the end of the year, like most people make New Year's resolution. I did one myself, and my lucky number is 7. I get up prior to 7 o'clock and read the Bible and do some things. And I did the same thing. And all of a sudden, we're on my show tonight on the Pull Up Podcast show with my girl hosting here, Val the Voice. And I was introduced to this side of the business. And then all of a sudden, all the coaches and ex-basketball players and everybody got a podcast, And when I jumped into it, it was just natural because I knew people like you. I knew other coaches and football players. And I said, wow. So now I can get a platform that allows me to talk to my friends about their journeys, about some of the same journeys that I had. And you just said it. That ball is going to stop bouncing one day. And when it does stop bouncing, what's the next plan? What do you have in store? Because some of those guys go overseas and play ball. The big difference is what some of our American players don't understand is you go overseas, and those contracts are only sometimes 6 months long. And if you don't make a move from a Thursday or Friday, they put you on a plane on Monday morning and send you back to America. They don't care because they pay you half your money up front. So to see that, and now to see someone like you came through that grind and know what the grind is about, what do you tend to do now that you're at American University? How do you intend to reach back at those young women and young men that are still coming up in the game that you can kind of put some twists and turns on their careers?
Yeah, I offer my mentorship and I offer my network, and one of the things I've done recently is I set up, and we talked because I set up a scheduling assistant. So I have the link and people can go on there and schedule anyone that wants to sit with me and have a genuine conversation on Zoom for 30, 45 minutes. They can go on there and schedule it, and it gets on my calendar. It shows my availability and they can get on there. And so I'll be on podcasts, and that's another thing too. Like anybody that reaches out and says, hey, you want to be on my podcast? Like as long as it's something I believe in and something that a topic that I know that I'm passionate about, then I'll never say no. And so just being available and being a resource. And I think my motto is I want to be for others what I wish I would have had. And during those dark times, and it's funny you kind of alluded to it, is that when I was coaching is a cutthroat business, whether people want to admit it or not. It's very cutthroat. And so when I was trying to become a head coach, you become people's competition. And they see you as a threat or whatever the case may be, right? And so I was having a very hard time finding mentors within coaching. And the ones that I was finding were predominantly males and predominantly white males, or because it was just the ones that were speaking my name in these rooms. And so what I try to do now is be that person for someone that is coming up. And so I'll have, for example, last week I had a call with a young man that reached out and he says, hey, I'm currently coaching And I think I want to get into athletic admin, but I'm not sure of like all the positions that are available within athletic department. So I gave them a rundown of like everybody in our department and what they do, because I had someone that did that for me. And so now that I'm an associate athletic director, you know, I have a lot of mentors. And what I realize is that at this level, we don't compete with one another because it's very student athlete facing. So like everyone that's an athletic director and an associate athletic director, we all are in it because we want to make a better experience for the student athletes, right? In coaching, it's a little different because yes, you want to have a great experience for the student athlete, but you want to win games because you want to keep your job. And so it becomes, and it becomes different. It becomes cutthroat, and it becomes, it can be lonely if you don't have a good circle and cohort, right? But then there's also the beauty of when you find a group of women within coaching that are supportive, that are secure in who they are and what they bring to the table, you can have an amazing sisterhood. So I have some amazing friends that are women and coaches, and you know, we help each other out, and it's not competition. We hype each other up, we promote each other's stuff. And I think that's what I've noticed the most is that the higher up you go, the less competitive it gets, in a sense of,
because the cream rises to the top. You already know how cream rises to the top. We are on right now with my girl, Patty Medina. We're at the halftime right now. We're going to take a quick commercial. We'll be right back to the Pull Up Podcast Show.
Hey everyone, this is Val the Voice Johnson, and want to let you guys know we are here every Tuesday for Interludes Extra Presents Talk on Tuesday. Myself and Coach Tony will be back with entertainment as well as sports. And of course, our podcast today, our other sponsor is, I have a new book called A DJ Saved My Life, and it's coming out on March 5th. The book gets released. It talks about oh my gosh, my career in doing podcasting and how it saved my life during the weirdest time of America and the world, the pandemic. So pick up a copy of A DJ Saved My Life. You can go ahead and scan the QR code in the upper right-hand corner and go ahead and support the podcast. Interludes Extra Presents Talk on Tuesdays. And now let's get back to the show.
Man, thank you, Val, for doing that. Patty, we got to get you one of Val's books right there. You know, DJ Saved My Life.
Congratulations to her.
You got, hey, you may be on a journey to write your own book in a moment. You just make sure I got a chapter in there somewhere. You know, I got to be able to.
I got you.
Man, I tell you what, it's been amazing looking at your background and how we just walk almost similar hand in hand. I run a lot of my camps and do a lot of things. I'm in Nashville. I'm all over doing some camps here and there. And when I read about your hooper mentality, first of all, I love it. So my brother watching the show tonight, he already knows what I'm about to say. But you know, growing up as a kid, everybody's I'm a hooper, man. We hooping, and I love it. You know, so how did you come about the name Hooper Mentality? And then when you came about that name, what is the organization all about?
Yeah, so Hooper Mentality came about. I was at a conference, a Women in the Game conference through Nike. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Again, wanted to transition out of coaching, wasn't sure just yet, you know, when or how. So I was attending conferences, and that's something that I do a lot too. I do a lot of professional development. Because you meet so many people at these events, right? And I can tell you firsthand that meeting one person, the right person, can change the entire trajectory of your life. And I'm living, breathing example of that. And so I'm at this conference, and Coach Corey Close from UCLA is talking about how her team has a sports psychologist and a mental health therapist within the team. And, you know, this was 2018. And so you're hearing her talk about how, they have a sports psychologist. And so I was there with one of my former athletes. And I said, hey, JP, like, this would be awesome if we could bring this into like middle school and youth camps. And so at the time I was already running basketball camps through other organizations. So then after this conference, I went home and I said, well, what could I name it? Like, what could it be? And so then Hooper Mentality came about, right? Because it's the mental health of the Hooper. And one of the things that for me, I just wanted to implement it to what I was already doing. So I was already running camps. And then I said, okay, well, how can we incorporate mental health into the camps? So we would ask sports psychologists to come in and help us get this information out. So they would come in and speak about coping mechanisms and identifying triggers and suicidal tendencies and depression and anxiety. And so it just became part of camps. And so now you're seeing it in more camps. Coaches are starting to take time to do some mindfulness within camp, right? Or some visualization at camps. And so you see it now more often, but at the time it was something that wasn't happening. And so, so fast forward to 2020, we had the George Floyd murder, and we were literally during COVID. And so we were in this situation where it's like, okay, we still want to be impactful, but how can we be impactful when we can't run these camps? Right. So we started doing a lot of online things. Yeah, we started doing a lot of online things. And then my college buddies hit me up and they said, hey, we want to do this children's march, and it's going to be called Speak Up and Dribble, and we want you to be a part of it. So
I remember that. Yeah. Almost a playoff that old LeBron James when I think one of the political person told him to shut up and dribble because she didn't think that he knew anything else besides quasi basketball.
Yep. So it was a spinoff from that, and we just wanted to provide a platform for the youth to also, be able to speak up and dribble and not just shut up and dribble. And so that was what we did during COVID, and we've been around, since 2018 we formed, but in 2020 we became a nonprofit. And so now we still go around the entire US. I've gone to Agua Prieta, and I've done a few camps in Mexico. In Agua Prieta, and we did a few in Detroit. So every year we go to Detroit. We partner with Detroit Parks and Recs. So we go to Detroit, we do one there. I've done them in Texas, and I've done them in San Diego. And
so I got to get you in Nashville next. So Nashville is the next stomping ground. I'm in a new city now, Patty. I mean, Nashville is like the new Chicago, as they say. So I got to get you here. And one of the people in the comment line said that they got a former WNBA friend and the coach who is has launched a energy drink. Looking at your Hooper Mentality for your merch, do you think, or do you see yourself stepping away from the athletic side of the house, maybe into a business side of the house where you're a business owner with a product or something to sell the public, or in that athletic space?
It would be more of a partnership. It would be, for example, the energy drink would help sponsor or be a part sponsor of the camps. Yeah, I don't see myself personally going into any business with that, because one of the things that one of the initiatives we have going on right now, and I don't know, I haven't really promoted it yet because I have to get the photos, but what we started doing too is reaching out to colleges and asking them to pledge that they'll do a mental health awareness game night. And so then what we do,
that would be nice.
Hooper Mentality donates the shirts. And so American University men's basketball team just wore them, and they wore their shirts during pregame. So it was pretty cool to see Hooper Mentality on ESPN2. And so they were on ESPN2, and then wore them during pregame. And so next year we're hoping to have more teams take that pledge, and then we're just going to donate the shirts. And then they get to acknowledge, mental health awareness, similar to the breast cancer awareness games where everyone does it and everyone wears pink. We want it to be mental health awareness, and everyone wears a green Hooper Mentality shirt. And so,
well, you just count me in, because I'll get us together. You count me in next season, and I'll make sure that my girls are. And by the way, your friend Lindsay Campbell told me, "What's up, Patty? You go, girl."
Hey.
So
That's my work wifey.
Exactly. So I mean, that is like phenomenal, and that is awesome. Well, we're gonna come back here. We're talking to my girl, Patty Medina, about sports, career, life, man, hooper mentality, what's going on in our mental health space. This is Coach Tony on the Pull Up Podcast Show. Right now, make sure you like the show, you share with your friends, and more importantly, subscribe. We're gonna knock out this one last commercial we got. Val, take it away into the fourth quarter.
Are you a small business owner looking to grow? Introducing the Key Spot mobile app. I'm Cynthia McAllister, owner of the IT company Quality SAP. Since 2016, we have been supporting small businesses and help them promote and share their businesses, services, and events across the country. Key Spot is more than just an app. We are a network providing community. Key Spot, connecting communities and supporting small businesses.
Man, welcome back to your boy, Coach Tony, and the Pull Up Podcast Show. And that's my girl right here. It's Patty Medina, talking everything on sports and basketball. Now, Patty, I tell you what, the thing that excites me more is I've had the opportunity now to spend 14 years on the women's side of the house in college basketball. And struggled this year a little bit going back to high school because, you know, it's a change. I'm going from the women at my level to a piece of paper. You know, I got this scholarship right here. You don't want to tear it up and you can leave. To high school where I don't have that and I got to go back and deal with parents. But I tell you what's been phenomenal is the thing that I've been able to teach them, because you hit it on the head earlier: teaching, coaching, and mentoring. In that order, I make sure I try to teach, or try to coach them, then I try to mentor them. And one of my former players is actually my assistant coach on my team, and it's great. It gives me chill bumps sometimes to just sit back and let her talk about what I meant to her and her career. And I know, like you don't see that when you're going through the process because you're too busy coaching and screaming at people to do things. But when you're looking at women in sports, all of a sudden, give me some of your comments on what we're seeing, like with the women now. They're announcing on ESPN. We've got sometime 3 referees on the court that's all female. That is tremendous. We're watching now women that are in the general manager and coaching position in the NFL of all places. Thanks to Greg Popovich in San Antonio, bringing in, Sue and other coaches on the bench. And now we're watching a phenomenal person like Caitlin Clark, who's smashing through what college basketball represents. And she's only behind my guy, Coach Mike Davis at University of Detroit's son, and also Pistol Pete Maravich, catching him about 200 points out. What do you think about what's going on right now with what women are doing in the world of sports?
Yeah, my motto right now, it's a beautiful time to be a woman in sports. So we joke. I have a friend of mine, Anessa Wolf Black, and we always say, "What a time! What a time!" It's so important. It's such an important and such a pivotal moment in sports, specifically for women, not just in the playing fields, but as you mentioned, also in the back end, right? In the front offices, in the general manager positions. You have Lindsey Harding, as a head coach for a G League team. You have Becky Hammond, who's probably, I hope so, going to be the first female head coach, and I think it's just so important to really bank on women's sports because the product has always been there, right? The sport itself, women in sports, has always been there, but we haven't gotten the accolades we haven't gotten the accolades and the just due that we needed. And we talked about it earlier, like growing up, you had to go read books and magazines about Cheryl Stoops and Lisa Leslie. And I was just reading. And, so it's important to really be supportive of it. And I think one of the things for me that, for example, even in the All-Star game with Steph Curry and Sabrina,
that was beautiful.
for someone to not be excited about that, regardless of whether she was shooting with the women's ball or if,
Yeah.
obviously
She
she
was
did
shooting
shoot
from
at
the men's NBA position though, Pat. She was like, hey, I'm with the women's basketball, but I'm shooting from the pro line. So at the end of the day, I like the comment. She said, if you're a shooter, you're a shooter. It doesn't matter. And I love what Steph said. He not only embraced her, and I know she said, I hope we don't have to do this again. But what I was loving what Steph said is this needs to be part of the NBA. And each year it needs to be a different person. And I know, as I'll tell you, and Val always say, for promotional purposes only, because I can't give out any odds. But next year, I'm thinking like someone like a Caitlin Clark is in there, with Halliburton from Indiana. I can see Halliburton and Caitlin Clark shooting it out next year. And because even though we watched a subpar dunk contest, right? We got a G League guy that had to come in and do that. And then we watched, a tremendous three-point shooting. And then I don't know what they were doing in terms of the game, but all eyes were on Sabrina and Steph. Out of the entire weekend, all eyes was on those two. And I think that it did a huge thing for the WNBA, giving it an extra life, saying that, hey, even though we may play with a ball that's maybe a half an ounce or an ounce and a half smaller, we got some good players out here. We can shoot the ball. We're still athletes. Now, the biggest piece that the NBA has got to figure out, which we thought they were going to do this a decade ago, when they start putting logos on a uniform, is that is increase these young women's pay. You got these men that are making taxes more than what the highest paid women are making. I mean, I'm looking at Brittany Griner. Thank you, Baylor, right, for retiring her jersey yesterday. That was phenomenal, this past weekend on Saturday. And she should have had it retired anyway. But our women, the Lisa Leslie's and the Candace Parkers, and like I said, these other women and Sabrina, they shouldn't have to go overseas to play to make an extra $200,000-$400,000 in the summer and put their lives on the line. In some of these countries, that they've got war going on, and then we got to figure out how to get them back home, because our pros, they don't do that. They go to Vegas in the summer league and play golf the rest of the year. So we got to figure that piece out. So I'm hoping, in your position and where you are, I'm hoping that as those doors have been open for you, I'm hoping other young women can come through those doors, and you see those doors and you allow those women to come through those doors and open up for them. So I'm absolutely just high-fiving you and praising you. You just have no idea.
Thank you. No, and then with the announcement of the new WNBA team in California, like it's only going to get better. It's only going to get better if women's basketball was a stock, like this was something you should invest in like years ago, because it's just only going to get better. And I think it's important to really continue to just acknowledge women. Even my son, when we were watching, my son's like, I'm only watching the All-Star game because Sabrina and Steph. And then he says, and he's a 15-year-old boy. And so he was like, yeah, Sabrina's about to show the world what the WNBA, like the type of potential and talent that there is in it.
And by the way, I had her. I thought she was going to win. And I told my buddies,
we were hoping she would.
I was like, and I thought she was so close. And speaking of your 15-year-old son, now that I was listening to a podcast you were talking about, and I thought that was phenomenal, looking at your plight, putting your family on the map in America, going on to be a college athlete. And what I love about your plight is that I had another young girl that plays, you'll love this. She plays for me, but she's a phenomenal golfer. Now, this young girl is learning the sport of basketball, and she's playing okay, Patty, but she finished tied for runner-up in the state of Tennessee golfing, and she's only a junior in high school shooting a 72. Par is 70, right? And we're on the way to a game one night, and all of a sudden, one of the girls asked her, what school are you going to go play at after this? And she said, I'm just getting a couple of looks at by some small Division III schools. I have no idea. I probably won't go. And I got so upset. And I waited till everyone was gone. And I said, listen, let me tell you something. Don't ever say that, because the sport that you play is golf. And 70 or 71, 72 at a D3 is still 70, 71, 72 at a Division I. And if you can play, you can play. The other piece is you may get to that D3 and that coach has a great year and gets a new job the following year as a D1.
Yeah.
What is he going to do? He's going to take his best players with him, which is you. So looking back at your journey and how you did, and now you put all that hard work in, and your son looking at that game with you, how do you balance mom and sports with your son and to make sure that he's still getting an opportunity? Because I'm sure he's at the American University. I'm sure he's at the game hanging out with the team now, right?
Yeah, I think he's over it in a sense of he's been around it so much that, you know, I'll tell him I'm like, oh, you want to go shoot? You want to go down there and shoot? He's like, nah, I'm good, you know. And I think he's just been around it. Like I was pregnant coaching. And so I've had to really, you know, part of me wanted to be like disappointed that he's not like a big hooper. But then another part of me is like, he's an amazing human being. Like he's very respectful. He has great manners. Yeah, he has it. So I'm proud that I haven't had to press him to do what I want him to do, and he's become his own person and his own identity. And I'm super excited to see where he goes with, you know, with his talents. But I think one of the things for me to be able to balance both is to setting standards for yourself, right? And setting boundaries. And that was one of the things I struggled with, you know, at Hartford Community College. Like I loved it, but they were very long days. At the JUCO level, it's just me. It's just me and the as athletic director. So it was me and him balancing 13 sports, almost 300 student athletes. And it was a department of really just 2-3 people. And then, you know, we had people on maternity leave and we had people in and out. And so it was very hard. It was very difficult to set boundaries with work-life balance. And then that's when I realized, okay, like I love what I do. I love it, but something's got to give. And I should be able to do both. Right. And so then when this opportunity came about with American University, it was a perfect opportunity to say, okay, I can still do everything that I love to do, but also have work-life balance because I don't have to be there all day, every day, setting up for every game. Like I think
like
my first week there, right. No, my first week there, I was just like, oh my God, I don't have to clean up after the game. Like I can just go home, you know.
You got to put the water. You just direct. You direct people to it. Like I'll get a chance. Like oh my God.
No, like there's people that's someone else's department. Like and they do a great job with it, you know. But I think everything that I went through has literally brought me to a position where I can be so grateful for even the littlest of things, right? So like, for example, not having to clean up after a game, like I'm grateful for that. Or just being able to sit and watch the game and cheer with my girl, Lindsay, like I'm grateful for that because normally every game I would have to be running around, you know? And so it's just being able to like hold steadfast to your boundaries. And then when you go to an employer, say, these are my responsibilities as a mom and as a, you know, if you're a wife or a husband or whatever, like, hey, these are my responsibilities. And it might be yourself. Like, you know, we take mental health days. We say, hey, we need a day off because self is important, you know? And so I think people forget work-life balance, not just work and life as family, but work and life as self. And so I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful.
Well, I appreciate you. I'm telling you that again. I've got you a big bouquet of flowers right here. I'm giving you flowers. You know, it's been and there's 7 years. They've been 7 years coming to you, so you get them tonight. But I want to thank you so much for your time tonight, and it's phenomenal. I mean, the thing you've done, you know, especially you just said it a moment ago. Our Black and brown moms don't get that opportunity that the majority gets. And to see someone like you that have put the work in, put the family on the back burner, go out and do those jobs, because that's what we normally do, right? You look into the majority of Black and brown families, they got 1, 2, mom is single mom. She's usually got 1 or 2, maybe 3 jobs and taking care of one child, sometimes 2 or 3 children. So to see someone like you to do that and be able to balance, and your son understand it, girl, I'll tell you, I don't have a hat, but hats off to you. And I will, we're tied at the hip now, girls. You're not going nowhere. You my ally, as you say. So exactly, we good. So like I said, it's so funny because I definitely appreciate you. I'm glad that you took the time out tonight to come on, because this was one of those shows at the time of the month coming in. And again, I'm glad I got you on here in February, because it also speaks to Black History Month of the work and the plight behind a lot of the African Americans who done a lot of this work in America that didn't get credit for it, and stuff that you're doing behind the scenes too. And I'm glad that you have, when you got to the fork in the road, you said, hey, you know something? I've already went down this road for basketball. It was great, but it didn't work out like I wanted. So I'm going to take this other avenue. But you know something? I'm going to make this one work out. And you have done just that. So you just don't forget about the small people over here when you get big. You know what I mean?
No, listen, it's all glory to God. It's all glory to God. I can't even take the credit. Like I tell people all the time, like if we put in the work, he'll take care of the rest,
Exactly
Faith without
right.
works is
Exactly.
dead, right?
Exactly right. Well, listen, you've been enjoying this wonderful show. This is the Pull Up Podcast show, and your guy, Coach Tony. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this show. And let's put a big, 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 big hand together for my girl, Patty Medina. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you for showing up. And this is the Pull Up Podcast show, episode 4. Val, take us out.
It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. Val's the voice and Coach Tony, it's the Pull Up Podcast. Show. I said Val's the voice and Coach Tony, it's the Pull Up Podcast. Show. It's the Pull Up Podcast.